The first thing people usually ask him is why they came in boats. Sometimes they ask it softly, as if they're afraid the answer might hurt them. At other times, they ask it like an accusation, as if a simpler solution must have existed. Before this story unfolds, if stories like this matter to you, if you believe real stories can save real lives, please like this video and subscribe. Someone out there is still silent, and this story might reach them in time. He never knows how to answer in a way that fits inside a single sentence. Before the boats, there was a life. Before the sea, there was land. Before the fear everyone imagines, there was something that felt like normal. He remembers mornings that smelled like dust and tea leaves. The sound of metal gates rolling open. The way the sun climbed slowly, as if it wasn't in a hurry to reveal what the day would become. He remembers laughter that came easily back then, even when money was tight, even when the future felt uncertain. They had routines. They had neighbors who knew their names. They had arguments about small things like who finished the water or who forgot to lock the door. That is the part people don't imagine. They think people like him were always running. They weren't. At first, the war was just noise in the distance. A rumor. A radio turned low. A conversation that stopped when a child walked into the room. People learn denial early, when it helps them sleep. They learn how to convince themselves that danger belongs to other streets, other families, other unlucky people. He did that for a long time, even when the nights became restless, even when the sky lit up in ways it shouldn't, even when familiar faces stopped showing up at the market. He told himself it would pass. He told himself this was how history worked. Something came, shook things, and eventually moved on. He had plans back then. Quiet ones. Nothing dramatic. He wanted stability. He wanted to build something slowly. He wanted a life that didn't require courage every single day. He believed patience was enough. He believed if he kept his head down, stayed kind, and didn't provoke fate, things would eventually settle. That belief kept him still longer than it should have. The first real crack didn't come with explosions. It came with absence. One morning, a neighbor's house was empty. Not locked. Not damaged. Just abandoned. Cups still on the table. Shoes by the door. As if the people inside had stepped out for a moment and forgotten to come back. He stood there longer than he needed to. Later, another house. Then another. The street started to feel wider and quieter. Sound traveled differently when fewer people were there to absorb it. Laughter became rare. Silence began to feel heavy, like it was watching them. Still, he stayed because leaving felt like betrayal, because staying felt like loyalty, because fear is strange like that. It convinces people that familiarity is safety, even when it isn't. The day everything shifted for him wasn't dramatic either. There was no shouting, no gunfire in that moment. Just a look in someone's eyes, someone he had known his entire life, now hollowed out by something he didn't recognize. It was the look of someone who had already accepted a future without options. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay there listening to his own breathing, wondering when exactly hope had started to feel like a lie he told himself to get through the day. And he realized something quietly. Staying wasn't courage anymore. It was inertia. And inertia was beginning to cost more than movement ever would. They didn't leave the next day. Or the next week. That's another thing people don't understand. Leaving isn't a switch. It's a slow surrender. You sell what you can. You give away what you can't carry. You stop planning for years and start planning for days. When they finally left, there was no farewell. No closure. Just a door that didn't matter anymore. The desert wasn't heroic. It wasn't cinematic. It was long, endless. A place where time stretched and folded in on itself. Days blurred together. Nights bit into their bones. People talked less as the journey went on, not because there was nothing to say, but because words cost energy. That was where he first heard the crying at night. Soft at first, then louder. Sometimes from someone nearby, sometimes from inside his own head. The desert strips people down to their most basic thoughts. Hunger, thirst, regret, memory. People disappear there too. Not violently, quietly. One day they were walking beside you. The next day they weren't. No ceremony. No explanations. People learned not to ask too many questions because answers didn't bring anyone back. They only slowed the journey down. Human traffickers spoke about hope like it was a product. They promised timelines, destinations, safety. They learned how to say your name in a way that made you trust them. He watched people hand over their last possessions with shaking hands, not because they believed completely, but because disbelief offered no alternatives. He kept telling himself the suffering was temporary, that pain was a bridge, not a home. By the time they reached the coast, he barely recognized himself. His reflection looked older, quieter, like someone who had learned too much too quickly. The sea smelled different than he imagined, heavier, unforgiving. It didn't feel like escape. It felt like a question with no good answers. The boats were smaller than the fear in his mind had already imagined. That should have frightened him more, but exhaustion does strange things to judgment. When people are that tired, danger becomes abstract. They stop asking if something is safe. They ask if it's possible. They climbed in. Too many of them. Too close together. Knees touching. Breathing shared. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else stared at the horizon as if daring it to argue back. The sea was calm at first. That's how it tricks you. The sound of the engine became a kind of heartbeat, steady and hypnotic. For a moment, absurdly, it almost felt peaceful. Night wrapped around them. The stars were sharp and distant, silent witnesses to whatever they were attempting. Then the water changed. The boat began to move differently. Not forward, but sideways, as if something invisible was nudging it. People shifted. Someone cried out. The engine stuttered. Panic arrived slowly, passing from one body to another. Then pirates appeared, like a rumor turning real. Their presence alone stole breath from lungs. The chaos that followed didn't feel loud to him. It felt muted, as if he were already underwater. Time slowed. Decisions became instinct. Fear stopped being an emotion and became a physical force. Then the boat capsized. There is a moment when the world flips that the brain refuses to accept. Up becomes down. Sky disappears. Water fills everything. He remembers the cold first. Then the pressure. Then the sound screams turning into choking silence. He saw people sink. Men, women, children. Hands reaching and then letting go. Eyes wide with disbelief. Bodies pulled down by weight they didn't understand until it was too late. The sea does not negotiate. He doesn't know how long he was underwater. Seconds, maybe. Or forever. He remembers thinking calmly that this was how it ended. Not with meaning. Not with dignity. Just here. When he was finally pulled out, it didn't feel like a rescue. It felt like an interruption. He coughed until his chest burned. The air tasted wrong. The sky looked unfamiliar, like he was seeing it for the first time and didn't trust it. Around him, there were far fewer people than before. Saved in the nick of time. People say that phrase lightly. But there is nothing light about being returned to life while carrying the weight of those who weren't. After that, everything blurred again. Facilities, blankets, questions asked in unfamiliar languages. He answered when he could, nodded when he couldn't. His body survived before his mind caught up. People told him he was lucky. He nodded. Because how do you explain that luck can feel like guilt when the voices of the lost refuse to quiet down? Life afterward wasn't the relief people expect. Safety arrived not as peace, but as silence. A silence filled with memories that refused to stay in the past. For a long time, he thought he was broken. But eventually he realized something important. The story didn't end when he was saved. It transformed, and he had a choice in how it would live inside him. He began to sit with the memories instead of running from them. Slowly, carefully, he allowed himself to grieve not just for the people who died, but for the version of himself who believed the world was predictable. He learned something many people never understand. Survival is not the same as healing. Healing is quieter. It looks like boundaries, like patience, like learning when to move and when to stay. Yes, they came in boats, but it was their only choice. That sentence used to feel defensive. Now it feels calm, factual, true. He does not romanticize the journey. He honors it by living honestly with what it taught him, that courage is not always loud and resilience does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "You're still here. Now what?" He still hears the cries sometimes. They have not disappeared, but they no longer control him. They remind him to live gently, to pay attention, and to never assume safety without compassion. And if someone listening carries memories they never speak about, his story holds a quiet message for them. Survival does not make a person weak. The fact that they're still questioning, still reflecting, still feeling that is strength, even when it doesn't feel like it. Everyone has boats they never chose, seas they never asked to cross. If his story stirred something in you, he would truly like to hear from you. What would you have done in his place? How do people live with memories that refuse to stay quiet? Feel free to share your thoughts, advice, or even your own experiences in the comments. He is listening.